If the trust fund is depleted, it just means the extras are gone. How do I know when to take Social Security? I don't want to lose out on money if the trust fund runs out, and I delayed taking it instead of going ahead and getting what I can. A lot of talk about that recently, really every year it gets talked about, and I think it's a common question in our meeting rooms too when we start addressing Social Security in the planning process with our clients. So let's talk about that and where we stand. First, what is the trust fund? Well, the trust fund is the emergency fund for Social Security, right? It's the extras. It is the money that is not needed today to pay out current benefits. Well, it is projected to be depleted in the next decade. In fact, as we sit here early 2025, the most recent report, which comes out from the Social Security Administration in April, says it's going to be 2034. So it's less than a decade now. And that varies, but it doesn't vary more than a couple of years one way or the other every time that annual report comes out. So what would that mean? If the trust fund is depleted, it just means the extras are gone. It doesn't mean Social Security's bankrupt because taxpayers are paying a Social Security tax every time they get a paycheck, and that money goes in and then it goes out to recipients. But it's going to be running at a deficit if the trust fund runs out. So what would have to happen is the Social Security Administration projects that benefits would be reduced across the board by up to 23%. So if that cut is made, it's likely projected to be enough for Social Security to survive through the rest of the century. So if you think about a worst case scenario here, Social Security is not going away because it by law has to continue. If benefits have to be cut, you could expect to still get a good portion of your benefit. But to April's point, does it make sense to take it early if that's going to happen? And I think if this is the worst case scenario, let's talk about the likely scenario. There are a lot of levers that Congress can pull here to preserve the trust fund for at least a little while longer. And by a little while, I mean decades, probably the rest of April's life. You could raise Social Security taxes. You could raise the retirement age. It hasn't been raised in a long, long time. Everyone born 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. Nobody's is higher than that. We've got people on our team here, and I use this in a client meeting room. Brandon is sitting there. Brandon Barber, who's our associate advisor, and he's about 24 years old. And I say, Brandon may be 80 before he can take his Social Security benefit, but it's okay because he's going to live to 130, right? So it is a possibility to raise the retirement age. The very unpopular one would be means testing, which basically would say, hey, they look at your assets and say you have enough money, you don't need Social Security, or you don't need all of your Social Security benefit. Could be a combination of all three, but the point here is none of these are politically popular, and that's why we haven't done anything yet.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case, and I go back just about every time this topic comes up, I go back to a Winston Churchill quote. He wasn't saying this about Social Security, but I think that it very easily applies. He said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after exhausting all other possibilities. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what Congress is going to do. They're going to look at every possibility, and really the key for any congressman, they want to be reelected. So they're not whoever's in office in 2034 and before that. They're not going to let this just go by the wayside and we don't have any money left over to pay out 100% of the benefits. There's no way they're going to do that because they would never get reelected. Yeah. So we do have faith that given time, that they will do something to expand the life of this. A lot of the things that Scott talked about have been in discussion for quite some time, but I think that they will exhaust a lot of time before they get to that decision point. But another thing that I would encourage April to do, though, is to really think about, regardless of how you feel about the viability of the trust fund, to think about a claiming strategy that is unique to you. There are so many different ways to claim your Social Security benefit, and it's key to understand that the Social Security Administration is not allowed to give financial advice. So you get a statement, and if you're married, your spouse gets a statement. And those two are not looked at together by the Social Security Administration. It's a his and a hers. Now, can you get that information about spousal benefits? Absolutely. But there's never a time when the administration sends out information to say, and by the way, there's these 80 plus different ways that one could claim Social Security, and here's the one that we think is best for you. They cannot do that. And so it's really important for you to understand what your opportunities are. Are you married? Have you been married in the past? Maybe you're widowed, maybe you're divorced. What is your retirement age going to be? Lots of variables come into play, and that needs to be taken into account. And really, again, if there's another person involved, whether it's an ex-spouse or a current spouse, we really need to solve for what are all the possibilities and what is best for your household income.